I swear this has nothing to do with politics or the government or government politics. In fact, this is a history lesson. So, make sure you guys brew your coffee because this is a long one. And yeah, don't fall asleep on me. You might learn something. Alright, here we go. One of the largest islands in the Mediterranean is Sicily. And this little chit-chat we're about to engage is about Byzantine Sicily. And a little bit of Norman Sicily. Okay, Sicily as a whole. This island is home to the La Cosa Nostra, the Mafia, in case you didn't know. You know, the Godfather, Al Capone, Scarface, all that stuff. This is where it started. But, way back then, this was a happening place. So before all that, there was a lot going on in this island. Aside from the indigenous population, the three tribes being the Sicani, the Elemans, and the Sicels. While they were already there before the Greeks and the Phoenicians, some archaeologists think that these three tribes, well, two out of the three tribes came from elsewhere, being the Iberian Peninsula, which is Spain, the Caucasus. But besides all that, we had Greeks to the east of the island and Phoenicians to the west. In fact, Sicily was a part of Magna Graecia, which means Greater Greece, in case you didn't know. You had an incredible amount of Greek migrants, right? And they all kind of settled in southern Italy and Sicily, eastern part of Sicily. They colonized it and, kind of created a whole world on their own. Now, on the west, you had the Phoenicians. The Phoenicians were seafaring people from, well, Phoenicia, which is modern-day Lebanon. Now, when the indigenous inhabitants and the Greeks and the Phoenicians weren't trading or intermarrying one another, they were fighting. You think each party would be happy with what they had. I mean, it was only the largest island in the Mediterranean, but no. Most of the time, it was a power struggle, with each side winning or losing ground to the other. Even other Greek factions tried to lay claim to the island, along with the successors of the Phoenicians, the Carthaginians. Now, the Carthaginians, who were from North Africa, were settled in modern-day Tunisia. They were a mix of Berber people, of North African and Phoenician settlers. And of course, their presence, threatened the Greeks, and they gave them a hard time. But sometimes it wasn't just a, battle for supremacy or land. In fact, there was, might have been a catalyst that ignited these acts of war. So you want to fast forward a little bit, and now you got the Romans on the picture. The Romans were lured in by mercenaries from South Italy. And just a quick side note, this is just a brief rundown of the facts here. I mean, other people who are, deep into history, a little bit, further educated than me, do a far better job at explaining this. But what I will do is link most of the subjects that I'm talking about at the bottom of this page. So if you want to check it out for yourself, be my guest. Anyways, the Romans took no time in dominating the other people situated on the island. They crushed the Carthaginians and gave the Greeks a break temporarily, until they got tired of that and they took the whole island for themselves. They absorbed the people there and added some colonists of their own from different parts of Italy. Fast forward a little bit more, and you had the Vandals, Goths, and what was left of the Roman presence there. See, after Rome fell, it was kind of like open season on different Roman provinces. And it just so happened to be the Goths and the Vandals took Sicily. The Goths and Vandals being of Germanic descent, not to confuse you guys. Now enter Byzantium. Now the Byzantines, as I mentioned before, they're the successor to the Roman world. They thought of themselves as Romans. They called themselves Romans, even though they were ethnically Greek, with other people from, Asia Minor. So, the Byzantines, now thinking themselves as Rome the sequel, were situated in Constantinople, which is modern-day Turkey. They had a very ambitious emperor in the beginning. His name was Justinian. Now, this guy got some of the best two generals he could muster up and sent them to Italy. Their names were Belisarius and Narses. And these guys, just reigned supremacy over anything they came across. And they retook Italy and Sicily for the empire. So from this point on, with a few minor setbacks, things were looking great. Obviously, it was hard from an empire so far away to control a province like Italy and Sicily, but they made it work. Despite a few setbacks, like pissing off the Pope from iconoclasm, and a new tribe of people called the Lombards. Most of southern Italy and Sicily was under, Byzantine control. Well, at this point, the settlers on the island being made up of mostly Latin Italians, obviously there was a great number of Greeks that settled in or around the coast of southern Italy, and Sicily for that matter. There was a lot of Byzantine garrisons that populated the area, and most of the people that made the ranks were Greeks from the empire, and possibly the local populace as well. So you had a nice mix of people. In fact, you had a short-lived Byzantine emperor who moved his court and palace to Sicily. And he was there to stay until his wife killed him. That's another story now. The religion for Byzantine Italy and Sicily, before the whole Great Schism, the split of Catholic West and Orthodox East, it probably wasn't a big deal. Or maybe it was. The Greeks mostly were Orthodox, which leads me to believe that most of the denominations there on the island were of the Orthodox type and followed that way of the church. In fact, there's some Byzantine churches and monasteries that resemble, Orthodox churches still around today. All seemed stable until a new threat was on the horizons: the Arabs. Due to infighting and overachieving emperors who totally disregarded Sicily at the time, paved the way for the Arabs to take control slowly. So over the course of time, the Arabs moved in, storming city by city in Sicily. The Arabs, being mostly from North Africa, were a mix of Berbers, the Semitic Arab ruling class, and Spanish Moors from Muslim Spain. Despite the stiff resistance from Byzantine garrisons, they eventually took the island, and this is where the real change began. So now you had mosques. You had a whole different religion straight from the east. You had Islam flourish and develop in Sicily. Like I said, mosques, they were built beside churches, and, a form of toleration was permitted. So you had, Christians, Jews, Muslims all living in the same area. Obviously the Christian and Jews, not being the dominating class at the time, were probably taxed. So that just goes without saying. Positive aspects, science and art flourished during this time. And the Arabs also brought cuisine and their language that influences Sicily till this day. So, not too long after all this, the Byzantines tried to retake the island with the help of some Vikings and Normans. Who were the Normans? The Normans are these Christianized Vikings from Normandy, France. Turns out they like Sicily too. And over a course of time, a long drawn-out war with the Arabs resulted in Sicily falling to the Normans. Now, the Normans, I don't believe they, massed numbers. It was probably a ruling class with the, regular populace, doing everyday stuff, and probably, filled the ranks of the people that were already there. So, you had a few probably, Scandinavian people walking around Sicily, but, I doubt there was much presence. But, they were great warriors, what can I say? Now, what did the Normans do with this very mixed society they just received? Well, for starters, they utilized the people there and created this multicultural pot of diversity that worked. The Normans used both Arab, Greek, and Latin architecture to build some of the finest cathedrals in Sicily. Still standing to this day. You can actually go out and check and see these monuments. I haven't been there, but just from the pictures alone, which I'm sure don't do it justice, it's a sight definitely to be seen. The Norman court, that's all the officials and the kings, was very diverse. It wasn't usual. It wasn't unusual hearing a mess of different languages spoken throughout the island. It being Greek, Arabic, Latin, all these things coexisted, and everything was fine. Obviously, time moves on, power shifts, and tolerance fades away. You had different, empires who took interest in the island and, bent it and changed it in their vision. This led to most mosques were converted to churches, and the Muslim and Jewish population either moved to another district or were converted forcibly. And this led to Latin dominating and officially being integrated in Sicily, with still the influences obviously of Greek and Arabic still present, but slowly fading as the years went on. But one has to step back and look at the positive achievements that the island gained from its diversity. And this made it the center of commerce of the East and West coming together. A crossroads of culture, if you will. My point is, today in modern American society, it's split between accepting different cultures or dismissing them altogether. Like I said, I'd rather not get into a political debate here, so I'm just going to conclude with this. We can always learn from history, especially how other civilizations dealt with changing times and how they made it work for them. Alright, guys. Thanks for listening, and until next time, peace. Talk to you later.